Second, within the basis, is John chapter 1, where in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. The Greek word logos literally means God was the definition of definition. And without an objective, transcendent set of standards, not only can morality not be defined, but knowledge to any type of certainty cannot be defined as well. Any fact of knowledge is a fact of God, because God created this type of correspondence. Therefore, the Christian worldview provides logical grounds wherewith the Darwinian naturalist can never do so. To say that belief in morality based on, with any type of substantiation, based on that we are the accidental byproducts of random unguided mutations, is simply absurd. Part 2. So therefore, to sum up, pretty much before I move on to part 2, the basis is the character of God, which reveals and then his expression through his divine mandates, shown that every fact of knowledge is a fact of God because the correspondence must be that way. In order, with no objective basis, the Darwinian naturalist has to succumb to some other type of worldview. And the options are very few. And the question becomes, as I now transition to the word borrow, how can anyone who holds a Darwinian naturalist materialistic worldview hold any type of ethical system from within this godless philosophy, including the ones held today? And pretty much the only thing we have are the neurons in our brains say so, at least for now. So borrow. I will start out and make my case through the quotes of atheists. First of all, we have the option of just pure indifference. The noted zoologist Richard Dawkins. In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt and others are going to get lucky. You won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at the bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no other good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to his music. And what's evil, Mr. Dawkins, when you have your some odd wonderful adjectival description of God and your God delusion? Was Hitler dancing to his DNA? What about Pol Pot? What about the Crusaders? Were we just dancing to our DNA? The decision about this lies within each one of us to see who is going to be rational. Number 2, human reason, which was also brought up. We have Kai Nielsen. We have not been able to show, and this is his book, Morals, Why Be Moral? Why Should I Be Moral? We have not been able to show that reason requires the moral point of view, or that really rational processes, unhoodwinked by myth or ideology, need not be individual egoists or classical amoralists. Reason does not decide here. The picture I painted for you is not a pleasant one. Reflection on this actually depresses me. Pure practical reason, even with a good knowledge of the facts, will not take you to morality. It's kind of innocent. It wants nothing to do with God. And he says reason can't do it. Because my question is, and the funny thing is Kant was a theist. Kant believed that you could maybe arrive at right and wrong without God, but in order to ground ultimate justice, he used God as a foundation. Kant was not an atheist. It's funny. The other issue becomes, is which human reason? Which man? Hitler? Hugh Hefner? President Clinton? President Bush? Whose reason? This is truly an epistemological issue. Number 3, we have science. And David Hume brings about his own objection. How can you get from a scientific is to a moral ought. This is the dilemma, for nothing in nature tells us anything on how to act. It just simply is. It's pure data. And David Hume's struggle was, how do you get from taking scientific data and moving it to morality? You simply cannot. And then we have nihilism, and this was coined by Friedrich Nietzsche. And Friedrich Nietzsche was at least a little bit more honest. And he said this, and this is out of his book, The Madman. Have you heard of that madman who lit a lantern bright in the morning hours, ran to the marketplace and cried incessantly, "I'm looking for God, I'm looking for God." As many of those who did not believe in God were standing together there, he excited considerable laughter. "Why did he get lost?" said one. "Did he lose his way like a child?" said another. "Or is he hiding? Is he afraid of us? Has he gone on a voyage or immigrated?" This they yelled and laughed. The madman sprang into their midst and pierced them with his glances. "Whither is God?" he cried. "I shall tell you, we have killed him, you and I. All of us are his murderers. But how have we done this? How were we able to drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? Why did we do when we unchained this earth from its sun? Whither is it moving now? Whither are we are we not plunging backward, sideward, forward in all directions?" And he goes on to talk about how he fell silent again and he sang his requiem at the end. Nietzsche was honest about when God gets removed, and he predicted that the removal of God would bring absolute tyranny, and the 20th century would be the bloodiest century of all time. And he was right. For we see in some of the atheistic regimes as well as theistic, because religion does poison some things. I'm not saying that religion and a misinterpretation of God's law does not bring about violence. But then the problem becomes, where do you find your moral groundwork without an absolute, transcendent set of standards which is nowhere to be found? Unless you have, because you see, humans are reduced in a Darwinian naturalistic materialist worldview down to just nature itself. And despite what Mr. Courtney has said, the issue becomes, is which animal then do we look to? It's funny how, hey, I will try to preserve the species of an endangered species, but if a tiger goes out in the wild and sees me, he sees lunch. Next, and that is nihilism, and that was Nietzsche. The next is biological determinism, coined by Michael Roos, that morality really doesn't exist, but we should in order just for the better function of society. Morality is an illusion fobbed off on our genes in order to get us to cooperate. The problem with biological determinism as well as cultural relativism is the fact that it's self-defeating because, number one, there's nothing in our cells that can even tell us that we're conscious. Can someone quantify my thoughts for lunch? See, we don't even know if we're conscious beings. If we don't know we're conscious beings, then we truly cannot know whether or not we can be accountable morally. But the problem even becomes more so because, you see, biological determinism is assumed to go outside the realm that it's inferring. And what do I mean by that? That means this. That means this. That means that the theory itself had to come from a chemical within the body. And therefore it can be dismissed. The same thing with cultural relativism. My culture determines whether or not my morality is going to be a certain way. It does have influence, but again, the theory was proposed by a person from a culture. So therefore, it is self-contradictory and can be dismissed. So we're left with a few other terms. Moral relativism. I don't know if there are any moral relativists in here. And just keep me on the time just so I got. That's it? That's it. Okay? And I will just sum up basically. I want to basically say that there is really no ethical foundation without a divine mandate, and with that, no justice, and suffering and other things of